it was kind of meh. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Riley K. Jones. I'm a writer, teacher, and authortuber, and today we're going to go through some of the books that I read in July and August. Now I know that the title of the video says that this is a August book read. I've been doing a lot of preparation for the new school year. My book reading in August has been a little bit lower, more on the educational side rather than the fun reading side. So August book list was a little short, so I decided to share with you what July and August reading encompasses. Now before I jump into the books that I read in July and August, I wanted to just explain a little bit about the challenge that I give to myself and that I give to you guys. Last year, I decided that I would read at least 20 fun books during the entire year. And I met that goal. And this year, I decided to do the same thing again for 20 books in 2020. None of us could have foreseen the events in 2020 and the amount of downtime that we could have received in 2020. So I have already met that goal, and now I'm kind of aiming for at least 25 books in 2020. I challenge you to do something similar. Pick a number that you think you can accomplish in a year and do that, because we all need to be reading more books. The first book that I'm going to start with today is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, which was an amazingly insane read. Holly Jackson did an amazing job, and if you like murder mysteries and romance, this is a book for you. The back cover of the book is what really got me, which is actually a section from the book about this cold case murder that took place in Pip's hometown. When you ask people about what happened to Andy Bell, they'll tell you without hesitation, she was murdered by Sal Singh. No allegedly, no might have, no probably, no most likely. He did it, they say. Sal killed Andy, but I'm not just so sure. And this actually is a great example for all you writers out there on how to write a hook. This was the hook of the book about how she doesn't believe that the person who allegedly killed Andy Bell was actually Sal. She had some really cool fun things in there, such as Pip's journal of her discovering the case and her research that she has done and put into it. And then the rest of the book is told in third person, which made for a nice break in between the journaling chapters, which was written in first person, and then the third person narrative. The plot was really cool, and I could not really guess the ending. I had some ideas, but like I did not see the ending coming until it happened. And you can go back and look through the book and you're like, oh my goodness, there's the clue there, there's a clue there. And that is a great example of a thriller. So if you like thrillers and mysteries and teen romance, this is a book for you. The second book that I'm going to talk to you about is a book that actually an author that I follow recommended if you are interested in spying or spy novels, and that is the Handbook of Practical Spying. And this was presented and published by the International Spy Museum, which is in Washington, D.C. I actually had an opportunity to go there back when I was in high school and was completely fascinated by it. So if you're ever in Washington, D.C., I suggest checking out the International Spy Museum. It was a lot of fun. And this book also kind of just delved into practical tips for you as a reader and living in the 21st century on how to use spying in your everyday life, not in a malicious type of way, but more of protecting yourself and just being aware of your surroundings. There's a lot of tips and tricks in here that you can use, and as well, if you are interested in writing spy or detective fiction, this had some really cool information for you. The next book that I am going to be sharing is actually two books that I picked up in about February before everything shut down. and I read one of them during quarantine and the other during July. They are To Catch a Killer by Cheryl Scarborough and To Right the Wrongs. Now, this book, I could say a lot about these books, and unfortunately not a lot of it is positive. The covers are what really drew me in at first. I really liked the feel of the covers, and then I really loved the premise, which the premise is that Erin Blake mom was murdered when she was a child, and she wants to figure out who killed her mom. A really interesting premise. And now her teacher also has been killed, presumably by the same killer, which is a really interesting premise. And the first 5 chapters was really done very well, sucked me in. That's what I read while I was at the bookstore, and I was like, I gotta get this book. But then as I kept reading, the plot line really just fell flat. The characters were kind of bland, except for her uncle, Victor. He was really the most interesting part of the whole book. And it was just not very good. There were a lot of times where I read things and I had to reread them, like, did I read that correctly? What? Like, it was very unbelievable what I read. It was a lot of times there were text speak that I just didn't really understand, and sometimes they were just like teen lingo that, like, I think she was trying too hard to make them sound like teens. A lot of the same characters had a lot of same quirks, like nail biting. They all kind of like bit their nails, and anytime they were nervous, there was a lot of just negative things, and I don't want to keep going on about that book. Then the next book was about her boyfriend whose father was arrested for murder. And one thing I just have to say, and this has nothing to do with the author herself, is the cover of the book is really, really awesome. However, this book takes place not in the fall, but June. And that was one thing that I really was just like, come on, publishers. Like, you couldn't have made her running in a bright green forest. Like, I don't know what happened there, and I don't think it's the author's fault. I think it's just the publisher's fault. But that was kind of a letdown. The rest of the book was, I think, written a little bit better than the first book. The plot was a little bit more believable. However, again, there was just a lot of annoying things. I don't know. I don't want to explain too much to give it away in case you do want to read it, because a lot of people did like this book. It just was not my cup of tea. And normally I like books like these, so I just feel it was just not the vision that, like, it did not capture the same exact mood that I was hoping for. It was kind of meh. The next book that I would like to talk about is Everything by Nicola Yoon, and I had heard of this book for quite a while now. I heard of the movie. I have not seen the movie yet, but I thought it was very interesting, and I actually found this at a thrift store, so I wish I could have bought it to support the author, but I happened to see it at a thrift store, and I was like, you know, I really want to try this book, especially because of the premise. The premise is a girl who has a rare disease and has to be basically living in quarantine her entire life, which I thought was, you know, kind of fitting of 2020. And I was like, let me see what the hype is all about. The book reads a lot more childlike than most young adult books. She has some really cool journals that her main character does, and so it is a lot more childish than most YA novels. Like, it would almost be classified as middle grade, but it was still a really fun read, and there was a really cool twist at the end. I think the twist could have been a little bit better, but it was still really good. It made the book so much more interesting and so much more than just a rom-com. She's also the author of The Sun Is Also a Star, which I am also putting on my to be read list. Second to last books that I'm going to share are a series. Unfortunately, I only have the second book with me. Someone else is borrowing the first book, but I had heard so much about this series that I just had to give it a shot. Everyone kept telling me how much they really loved it, and if you liked Harry Potter type of stuff. you would also like this. And since I have taught in the past an ancient literature course where we talked about a lot of Greek mythology, I thought, hey, why not? Let's give this series a try. And that is the Percy Jackson series, books 1 and 2. I have fallen in love with this series. I think it is done really. Rick Royden. I don't know if I'm saying that name correctly, so I'm sorry, Rick. But I really, really loved his series. I think that the characters were well written. I think that the plot was really well written. It takes the entire hero's journey really well, and it was also humorous and enjoyable. Before I read the book series, I heard a podcast interviewing Rick Riordan and why he wrote these books, and he wanted to write these books for his middle school students to have a book series that they can connect to, especially those who have learning disabilities, because a lot of the Half-Bloods are dyslexic and have ADHD, which I thought was very interesting and so very inclusive of those people. So I'm hopefully getting the 3rd book soon. I have 4 and 5 on my shelf. I need the number 3 to be able to read those. So I'm really hoping to finish the series soon, and I'll let you know what I think about the entire series in another video. The last book that I want to talk to you about is a book that I don't have. I have the whole book here, but I did not read this whole book yet, but I have read The Fellowship of the Ring. It's actually been on my to be read list for a while now. I want to say almost, gosh, 8 years. This is why I started that book challenge, because it was on my reading list, but I just never, ever got to it. So anyway, actually I listened to the audiobook of it, which is normally something I don't do very often, but I really needed to read the book, and I had a lot of chores to do. So something that I like to do is listen to audiobooks or podcasts while I do chores. And so I listened to the first Lord of the Rings book, Fellowship of the Ring, and I really enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Tolkien is famous for a reason. Like, his books, the way that he writes prose is really fascinating. He uses a lot of similes and metaphors and a lot of imaginative comparison and figurative language to really just draw in you as a reader into the book. I had read The Hobbit a year ago, well, 2 years ago now. I read The Hobbit 2 years ago, and I really liked that, and I was just always so daunted because I mean, like, this is the copy I have, and look how thick it is. I mean, sure, it's longer than some of the longest Harry Potter books, and at least together as a whole, and it just was so daunting to me that I just never picked it up. I think that's the problem. If you are going to read the Lord of the Rings at all, just get the individual books, so that way it's not as daunting. If this type of book is daunting to you, just get the 3 books separately. But yeah, I really liked the book. The only thing that I had an issue with it is sometimes they do these songs, and I don't know if it was just Tolkien's time period that was really popular, or if that was fantasy, or if that was just something Tolkien did to get more detail and more backstory. But that was the only thing I didn't really like. By halfway through the book, you have like read through so many songs that it's just like, okay, let's keep going. We don't need to really hear this. Let's skip over that. But I loved the first book, and I am listening to the 2nd book right now, and I really enjoying it. And I never thought I would enjoy Lord of the Rings because I was always more of like a romance type of gal, but here I am reading Lord of the Rings, and I love it. And that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know down below in the comments what kind of books have you been reading over the summer and in quarantine. What is your favorite book that you've read, and were there any particularly bad books that you read, such as the one I showed you earlier? And if you would like to see more videos like this one, please hit that likes button and make sure you click subscribe for more videos on all about writing and books. Thank you so much for watching. Keep writing, keep reading, and stay creative.